Yeah. Are you concerned about the leak?
Well, I'm not concerned about the leakages, and I'm concerned that it happened. But there's nothing contemporaneous that I'm aware of that is of great consequence.
Biden and the U.S. just received another blow, as a trove of leaked Pentagon documents reveals how deeply Ukraine has been penetrated by Russia. The documents lay bare the American assessment of a Ukrainian military that is also in dire straits. The documents from late February and early March, but found on social media sites in recent days, outline critical shortages of air defense munitions and discuss gains being made by Russian troops around the eastern city of Bakhmut. The intelligence reports show that the United States also appears to be spying on Ukraine's top military and political leaders, a reflection of Washington's struggle to get a clear view of Ukraine's fighting strategies. The material reinforces an idea that intelligence officials have long acknowledged. The United States has a clearer understanding of Russian military operations than it does of Ukrainian planning. Intelligence collection is often difficult and sometimes wrong, but the trove of documents offers perhaps the most complete picture yet of the inner workings of the largest land war in Europe in decades. American officials said that although the documents offer hints about U.S. methods to collect information on Russian plans, U.S. intelligence agencies do not yet know if any of their sources of information will be cut off as a result of the leak. U.S. officials have conceded they have lost some sources of information since the war began, but the new documents appear to show that America's understanding of Russian planning remains extensive. But the leak has the potential to do real damage to Ukraine's war effort by exposing which Russian agencies the United States knows the most about, giving Moscow a potential opportunity to cut off information sources. The leak has complicated relations with allied countries and raised doubts about America's ability to keep its secrets. After reviewing the documents, a senior Western intelligence official said the release of the material was painful and suggested that it could curb intelligence sharing. For various agencies to provide material to each other, the official said, requires trust and assurances that certain sensitive information will be kept secret. The documents could also hurt diplomatic ties in other ways. The newly revealed intelligence documents also make plain that the U.S. is not just spying on Russia, but also its allies. While that will hardly surprise officials, making such eavesdropping public always hampers relations with key partners, such as South Korea, whose help is needed to supply Ukraine with weaponry. Senior U.S. officials said an inquiry, launched Friday by the FBI, would try to move swiftly to determine the source of the leak. The officials acknowledged that the documents appear to be legitimate intelligence and operational briefs compiled by the Pentagon's Joint Staff, using reports from the government's intelligence community, but that at least one had been modified from the original at some later point. One senior U.S. official called the leak a massive intelligence breach, made worse because it lays out to Russia just how deep American intelligence operatives have managed to get into the Russian military apparatus. Officials within the U.S. government with security clearance often receive such documents through daily emails, one official said, and those emails might then be automatically forwarded to others. Another senior U.S. official said tracking down the original source of the leak could be difficult because hundreds, if not thousands, of military and other U.S. government officials have the security clearances needed to gain access to the documents. The official said the Pentagon had instituted procedures in the past few days to lock down the distribution of highly sensitive briefing documents. The documents posted online were photographs of folded papers, some with images of a magazine behind them, information that may help investigators. The documents show that nearly every Russian security service appears penetrated by the United States in some way. For example, one entry, marked Top Secret, discusses the Russian General Staff's plans to counter the tanks NATO countries were providing to Ukraine, including creating different fire zones and beginning training of Russian soldiers on the vulnerabilities of different Allied tanks. Another entry talks about an information campaign being planned by the GRU, Russia's military intelligence unit in Africa, trying to shape public opinion against the United States and promote Russian foreign policy. While some intelligence briefs offer analysis and broad warnings of Russian plans, others are the kind of actionable information that Ukraine could use to defend itself. One entry talks about the Russian Defense Ministry formulating plans to conduct missile strikes on Ukraine's forces at specific sites in Odessa and Mykolaiv on March 3rd, an attack that the U.S. intelligence agencies believed would be designed to destroy a drone storage area and an air defense gun, and to kill Ukrainian soldiers. Still another entry discusses a report in February disseminated by Russia's National Defense Command Center about the decreased combat capability of Russia's forces in eastern Ukraine. Although the documents were compiled by the Pentagon's Joint Staff, they contain intelligence from many agencies, including the National Security Agency, the State Department's Bureau of Intelligence and Research, and the CIA. Some of the material is labeled as having been collected under the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, FISA, noting that its further distribution is not allowed without permission of the Attorney General. One section of the documents is labeled as being the CIA Operations Center intelligence update from March 2nd. That section discusses intelligence on how the Russian Ministry of Defense had considered steps to counter accusations that it had not been supplying munitions to Wagner Group troops in Ukraine, according to a signals intelligence report. The documents reveal that American intelligence services are not only spying on the Russians, but are also eavesdropping on important allies. In the pages posted online, there are at least 2 discussions about South Korea's debate about whether to give the U.S. artillery shells for use in Ukraine, violating Seoul's policy on providing lethal aid. One section of the documents reports that South Korean officials were worried that President Joe Biden would call South Korea's president pressuring Seoul to deliver the goods. Another section of the documents from the CIA is more explicit about how the United States has learned about the South Korean deliberations, noting the information was from a signals intelligence report. China aid Russia. China approved the provision of lethal aid to Russia for its war in Ukraine but wanted any shipments to remain a secret, according to leaked U.S. government documents. A top-secret intelligence summary dated the 23rd of February states that Beijing had approved the incremental provision of weapons to Moscow, which it would disguise as civilian items, according to a report in the Washington Post. The intelligence was gathered by U.S. agents eavesdropping on Russia's Secret Service discussions, the newspaper reported. The Russians said China's Central Military Commission wanted the shipments to remain secret, it added. A separate intelligence file in the trove of leaked documents said Beijing would consider a significant Ukrainian strike with U.S. or NATO weapons on Russian territory as an escalation of the conflict that would merit sending arms to Russia. The files were part of a large batch of leaked classified documents that appeared on the online platform Discord last month. On Friday, Jack Teixeira, the 21-year-old accused of leaking the documents, will appear in court in Boston. U.S. officials have said that the documents are authentic and contain highly sensitive information, although some appear to have been doctored. The leak about China's willingness to send weapons to Russia appeared to be genuine as soon after the date of intelligence reports in February, U.S. government officials made the claim publicly. Beijing has vigorously denied the accusation. There is no evidence that any such weapons have actually been sent. On Friday, China's Foreign Minister Qin Gang said his country would not provide arms to either side of the conflict and would also restrict the export of dual-use technology. Discussing the leaked documents, President Joe Biden said on Thursday, "There's nothing contemporaneous that I'm aware of that is of great consequence." However, the disclosure of intelligence from less than 2 months ago undercuts that claim. China, like Russia, is critical of NATO and has suggested that the conflict was provoked at least in part by the bloc's expansion. Beijing says it wants to help mediate a political settlement to the war, but Western leaders see Xi Jinping's clear allegiance to Vladimir Putin as undermining that stance. In March, Xi visited Putin in Moscow and raised a glass to the deepening of the Russian-Chinese partnership. Trade between the two countries has grown since the start of the war, and China sees Russia as an important ally against a US-led world order. Xi has tried to position himself as a global statesman, with the recent China-brokered deal to restore diplomatic relations between Saudi Arabia and Iran being cited in Chinese media as an example of China's positive influence on global peace. But many analysts think Xi's clear support for Russia makes a China-brokered deal in Ukraine impossible. Xi was expected to call Volodymyr Zelensky, Ukraine's president, after visiting Moscow, but the call has yet to materialize. China and Russia are in advanced secret talks with Iran to replenish the Islamic Republic's supply of a key chemical compound used to propel ballistic missiles. Diplomats familiar with the matter say, a move that would mark a clear violation of United Nations sanctions and possibly help Moscow replenish its depleted stock of rockets. Tehran has held concurrent negotiations with officials and government-controlled entities from both countries, including the state-owned Russian chemical maker FKP Anazet, to acquire large amounts of ammonium perchlorate, or AP, the main ingredient in solid propellants used to power missiles, said the diplomats, who requested anonymity in order to discuss confidential information. In Beijing, Iranian diplomat Sajjad Ahadzadeh, who serves as Tehran's technology counselor in China and the broader region, has led the talks to acquire AP, according to the diplomats familiar with the matter. The diplomats said they didn't know which Chinese companies were involved, however. The exact quantity of AP Iran is seeking to purchase isn't clear, but the diplomats familiar with its plans estimate it would be sufficient to build thousands of rockets, including the Zulfiqar missile, which has a range of 700 kilometers and has been used by both Iran and its proxies in the Middle East in recent years. If the deal goes through, some of those rockets could end up being deployed against Ukraine, the diplomat said. Iran has supplied Russia with so-called kamikaze drones that it has used to attack Ukrainian civilian targets and has also advised Moscow on how to circumvent the international sanctions it faces as a result of its actions. Representatives for China, Russia, and Iran did not respond to requests for comment. Iran's foreign ministry referred questions regarding Ahadzadeh to the Iranian embassy in Germany, which did not respond. The Iranian embassy in China also did not respond to questions about the diplomat's activities or make him available for an interview. The talks about procuring AP follow a warming of relations between Iran, Russia, and China, which see themselves as a bulwark against U.S. influence, in the wake of Moscow's all-out war against Ukraine. Chinese President Xi Jinping, who visited Moscow last month, has stopped short of openly endorsing Russian President Vladimir Putin's war in Ukraine, but has left little doubt that Beijing's allegiances ultimately rest with Russia. China, which recently presented a peace plan that critics say would force Ukraine to cede territory occupied by Russia, wants to make sure the Kremlin doesn't lose the war, amid fears that could trigger the collapse of its neighbor and wider destabilization. What do you think about the Pentagon document leaks? Let me know down below. If you want to continue to learn about business investing and financial education, we have got 2 more videos waiting on the screen for you to check out. Don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe for more videos about investing. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.